Good evening, everyone. For those of you that are logged in, we're just going to give it maybe one more 30-second blurb. We're watching the participant number go up. Right, well, we will start. I have a little intro, so that'll give some people a little bit more time to log in tonight. We are thrilled to have you all here for our Homebuying Huskies event presented by our Young Alumni Advisory Board, the Life Skills Series. Thank you, you're calling in, you're viewing from all over, and we're so glad that you made time tonight, as well as thanks to our wonderful panelists for their time that they're giving to the program. Hello. I'm Adrienne Denenberg, Senior Director of Engagement Initiatives for the Office of Alumni Relations at Northeastern. One of the many privileges is that I do get to work with the Young Alumni Advisory Board. And a few years ago, a group of the board came together and realized, you know, there are some life skills that you don't instantaneously pick up, even at such a great school as Northeastern. So they brainstormed a list of some areas. One was personal taxes. We've done the art of the side hustle. We've done programming around, well, tonight, how to buy a home. And one of our board members, who you'll get to meet in a hot second, being a real estate agent herself, spearheaded tonight's event. And so she has brought together some of her great contacts. And you'll get to hear from all of them tonight to learn about just what this process is like. I think you might recall from the email invitation, not only dare I say normal home buying process, but also what it looks like in the time of COVID. So before I turn the mic over, as well as the screen, a few details. You might have gotten that wonderful message that we are recording. This is one of our virtual events that we keep on our virtual archives. So if you've missed any in the past, we will share we'll make sure to send a link out about our virtual archives webpage, but that will be on our site in a couple of days. We want to make sure you know that the suggested view for tonight is, because we're on the Zoom webinar platform, if you go to that view button and choose the side-by-side speaker view, you'll have a clearer picture of who's actually talking, as there are a few presenters this evening. And speaking of our presenters, we have the Q&A option. So feel free, if you have questions along the way, to populate the Q&A box. And at the end of each presentation, those questions will be asked, as many as we can get to within the time we have tonight. So without further ado, I will hand this over to Jackie Crawford Ross, one of our, like I said, Young Alumni Advisory Board members and tonight's moderator. Thank you, Jackie.
Awesome, thank you. Hello, everyone virtually. My name is Jackie Crawford Ross. I am a realtor in Massachusetts. I'm also a Husky alumni, class of 2011. And so today, we are going to be walking you through the home buying process. Of course, we're trying to keep in mind that people attending today are from all over the US, which is great. So we're going to keep it as high level as possible, but please feel free to ask questions along the way. And if there are questions that are particular to your state, or it may be particular to your own home buying process, we'll be able to connect you to resources to handle that. So first, we're going to go over a very high level timeline of what the transaction process looks like. And then from there, each of the panelists are going to break down their particular function in the transaction timeline to hopefully elaborate and address any questions that you guys have. Okay, so first step of the home buying process typically begins with the realtor or the lender. I'm going to have Sophia go into more detail in a little bit on the lending process, pre-approval, pre-qualifications, etc. But let's say the process starts with someone like myself, the realtor. It's a good idea to have a buyer consultation to begin with. It's typically about an hour with a realtor, and we go over what you are looking for in a home, what you're looking for in a community, where do you need to be with work, essentially your wants and needs list. The realtor is also going to go over what the market looks like. What does the transaction process look like in your particular area, so that you can expect what the home buying process might mean for you in your particular situation. This actual searching can last anywhere from a week to a year, depending on what you're looking for. But it's really important to have that buyer consultation to set proper expectations and to just get a high level overview of what you can expect along the way. So once again, Sophia will go into her section on the lending and pre-qualification. But after our buyer consultation, we begin that search, and let's say we find the dream home. Let's say we find exactly what you're looking for. It's got the corner unit close to the office and downtown. We're going to make an offer. Fabulous. So the offer, for today's purposes, there are many components to the offer, but there are two big parts to the offer to note for tonight. One is the price that you are offering to the seller. The second part is the terms that you're offering to the seller. Working with a realtor to craft the perfect offer is really important, but all that I'll mention for right now is that sometimes price doesn't win. Sometimes it's the terms that you can offer to the seller that are more impactful. So with the offer, I'm going to call that day one. The seller has 24 hours to respond to you typically. And for today's purposes, let's say they say yes. Yay! First step in the process, day one. Your first deposit is due. Sophia will go over more about deposits and down payments as well, but all you'll need to know for in this moment, your deposits are part of your down payment. So that's what we need to know. So day one, submit an offer and hopefully it's accepted. Then from there, we schedule inspection, which the inspector will be going over what inspection looks like and what that entails. But we schedule inspection. You work with your lender to do your full application for a mortgage if you're doing a mortgage, and you start getting home insurance quotes along with that. So after day one, those are your homework items. Then from there, we typically need to conduct an inspection within 10 days of our offer being accepted. Inspection is a very important part of the process. And not only is the inspector, and Rob will elaborate more on this, the inspector going over the structural, mechanical parts of the home, but it's almost like homeownership 101. The inspector is going to walk you through what to expect for lifespans of appliances in the house, lifespan of a roof, etc. So we typically do inspection within 10 days of our offer being accepted. Then from there, we typically go to purchase and sale. Purchase and sale, which Krista will elaborate on, is typically done by an attorney, but it does vary from state to state. And the purchase and sale is essentially marching orders to get to closing. It instructs the buyer and the seller things that they need to do in order to cross the finish line. And also to note with purchase and sale, your second deposit is due. So it may vary from state to state, but it's very common to have a second deposit, which is a part of your down payment, due at purchase and sale. After purchase and sale, two big things happen in the transaction process. First part of that is after purchase and sale is appraisal. So when appraiser goes, the lender sends an appraiser to the property to make sure that what we are offering to purchase the home is truly worth what we're offering to purchase the home. So Todd will elaborate more on appraisal in a little bit, but it's important to know that appraisal happens after purchase and sale, and it's a big part of the financing process. Then from there, let's say appraisal goes fantastic. Then hopefully we have mortgage commitment. We typically need mortgage commitment 7 days before we close on a property. And that's essentially when the bank says, yep, you're financially qualified to buy this house. Here you go. And the property is worth what we're offering for it. Here's a whole boatload of money to buy this house. Then from there, it's closing time, etc. Yay, so exciting. We typically do a final walkthrough of the property, and that's just making sure that everything is as we saw it. The seller hasn't graffitied the house or anything. That hopefully that doesn't happen. But then we go to closing, which Krista will elaborate more on. The attorney typically closes, and it's about an hour long to do the closing. It's signing a bunch of documents, and Krista will go over in more detail. But then you're a homeowner. Doesn't it sound so simple? No, it is. If you work with the right team, it is. My goal at the end of every transaction is everyone goes, well, that was easy. Wasn't it supposed to be hard? That's the goal. Total time from when we submit an offer to closing is typically 45 days. Of course, we'll go into more detail with our fabulous panelists here, but I wanted to give you a high level overview of what the transaction process looks like when you're in it. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Sophia. Oh, actually, there is a question in the chat box. The question is how to find a good realtor. Fabulous question. Fabulous question. So how to find a good realtor and to find a good realtor in your area. Two big important things. One, do you jive with the realtor? Some people are just not your cup of tea. So do they communicate the way that you like to communicate? Are they good? Do you like to talk to someone on the phone? Do you like to text with someone? Do you like to email? Communication is important. Also, do they get back to you? Most everyone, especially everyone here on this panel, can attest that we typically work 7 days a week. With maybe some breaks, but are they going to work as hard for you as you to them? So making sure that you jive and communicate well with your realtor, I think, is really important. The second thing I think is really important is the amount of transactions they typically do. Oftentimes I find that if someone is looking to work with a realtor, maybe it's a family friend or, their mom referred them to their great aunt Sally, who maybe has been in real estate for 30 years. While that's incredibly impressive for sure, and many times realtors who have been in the industry for a very long time are very well versed, I think the amount of transactions a realtor does is more important than necessarily the years, because we want to make sure that the realtor is up to date with 2021 transactions and not how things were done in the 80s and 90s, et cetera. So hopefully that answers your question on, to elaborate on that, what separates a good realtor from a bad realtor? A good realtor is always going to get back to you. They're timely in their communication. They try to work with all parties. So whether, of course, they're working with you, representing you as the buyer, but are they getting along and communicating well with the selling side? Are they communicating, getting along well with the lenders and the attorneys and the appraisers and the inspectors? So making sure that communication and on top of every detail is key. And I guess what potentially might be a bad realtor is someone who is not knowledgeable on a 2021 environment of real estate. And you'll usually find out quickly if they are not on top of current market trends. So hopefully that answers your question, high level, of what separates a good realtor from a bad realtor. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sophia, who is going to go into more detail about financing.
Hi, thank you, Jackie, and thank you everybody for being here at the class. My name is Sophia Treviakis with Mortgage Network. We are a local direct lender here in Massachusetts. I do lend in all of New England, so if you're in Maine, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, or Massachusetts, we do lending all over. I want to definitely talk about today kind of the first step type of why some borrowers are hesitant to maybe get pre-approved, or where do you start? When do you start? If you're going to look to buy something in 6 months, when should you start this process? And I think that's a lot of people's question. When do you start this? And my advice would be about 6 months prior to buying a home. And one of the major reasons for that is actually credit and qualification. And actually, with COVID, it has made it a little bit more difficult to qualify, with a lot of people having maybe some gaps in employment. They were laid off for a little bit, getting hired back on. So it's really, really important for you to start early and talk to a lender before you even really find a real estate agent. I always do believe that we're the first step to talk to somebody what you can buy. And I think a big hesitation is the pre-approval. When should I pull my credit? So that's another thing. And I'm going to talk about credit in a second. But what you do, the right place to go, let's say to start this process, is try to work with a local lender. You don't want to work with the Quicken Rocket online application. They're taking a quick application online from you and nobody is looking at it. They just generates a letter for you. There's not a real person on the other side that's looking at your whole application, checking, do you make any commission or bonus income that we can use that to qualify? I had someone today that had written a book, and actually all their income comes from book royalties, but she put on her application $120,000. So if I didn't ask, I would have never known. So you definitely want to make sure that somebody's really looking at your application. They're available. Like Jackie said, the communication and availability in this industry is key. If you don't have somebody that's not responsive to you, that's why I say someone local is generally going to be the best option for you. Somebody you can walk into their office is who I recommend. Definitely research all different programs as well. You don't want to only talk to, when you walk in, let's say to a Bank of America, you're only going to have available what their products are and not have multiple options. So someone like a Bank of America, let's say, or a Citizens Bank, something local here in Massachusetts, they actually don't offer any FHA loans, any VA loans. So if you're a veteran, a lot of them don't offer those. So make sure you're talking to a lender that can offer you a wide variety of programs. So a mortgage company, someone like a Mortgage Network that does multiple programs, I think is a really good place to start. Okay. Make sure they're not charging you for a pre-approval. Most people are not now, but I have heard some people are charging you for a credit report, or, they're saying, well, I can't really take your application, or if you don't commit to our bank by charging us the application fee, which is $500. Sometimes I've heard that. So just make sure you're not paying anything up front, because when you get a pre-approval letter from a lender, you're not actually obligated to even use that lender technically when you go to make an offer on the house. It's just getting your first initial approval. Okay. Jackie, how do I go to the next slide? Sorry. I don't know if I do it.
Let me. There. Sorry
about that, guys. Okay. So a couple things when getting pre-approved and pre-qualified, which I'm going to talk about here in this. Let's skip down to the pre-qualified versus pre-qualification. So somebody in California sued a bank because they were pre-approved and didn't get the loan. So now we have to call it a pre-qualification. A difference between a pre-approval and pre-qualification is kind of complicated. Every bank calls it different now. We actually even adopted we call it a home buyer analysis, because it's so confusing for people. So just make sure when you're talking to a lender and getting approved, however you're getting approved, that they're looking at your income, they're looking at your assets, they've actually pulled your credit and checked your income, and you've given them enough information to qualify you. So like I said, if you just typed in a few things online and it spit you out a letter, that's not going to be a letter that you'll be able to really make an offer with. So make sure that they're reviewing these things up top of the 5 key things of ownership. So you want to look at job stability. So we're going to look at how long you've been at your job. Every bank's going to typically look at 2 years of your past and then look 3 years into your future. So you want to see where you've worked the last 2 years, where you've lived the last 2 years, what your credit history is. Obviously, credit score is going to play a huge role on the type of credit report we'll pull. It's going to play a huge role in the type of program you're going to qualify for, and also play a large role on what type of loan you're going to be getting and which is the best loan program for you. So that's why checking this early will help you really kind of get ahead of the game if you need to fix something, or if I say, you know what, if you can just do a couple things to your credit to get you into a better loan program, it would be better to do it early than wait, find your dream home on a Sunday afternoon and try to get approved. And we have to rush to try to get your approval. So having that in advance really reduces that stress of, can I get a loan even to buy a nice home that you'd like to live in? So your assets as well, understanding how much you have available for assets, what your down payment is, and also closing costs. As a buyer, you have to pay for costs to do the loan, and also to pay for items such as property taxes, insurance. So you should anticipate for about 1 to 1.5% of your purchase price. So if you're buying a $500,000 home, you should anticipate for about $5,000 in closing costs and another 3 to 4 in taxes and insurance. So around 8,000. So make sure you're aware of that before you're purchasing the property, and have your assets in check. Personal qualifications are, again, stuff like, are you self-employed? Have you been an owner of a business for more than 2 years? You really want your loan officer or the person you're talking to get that loan approval. You need to tell them everything. And I'm your liaison between you getting the mortgage and getting your loan approved. So you want to tell your loan officer everything, because believe me, we find out everything. On your credit report, we know where you've lived, what you've done for the last about 7 years. So you want to make sure you let the loan officer know all the details so that we can get past anything that pops up on your profile. So next page, Jackie. I think it talks about credit. Okay, so this is a really good slide. It talks a little bit about credit and how your credit score can affect your financing. So right now, if you have a 740 credit score or above, that puts you in the top tier. So you get the best interest rate if you have a 740 credit score or above. And then what happens is goes in tiers from there. So it goes from 740 to 720, and then 720 to 700, and then to 680, 660. And right now, the minimum credit score is a 640 for you to be able to do any type of loan. It used to be much lower. Now with COVID, they've actually increased that credit score to 640. A lot of people don't realize, and especially youngins, maybe if you're in college right now, is your payment history is a lot of your credit score, but also the amount you owe is. So if you see the amount you owe on your credit cards is 30% of your credit score. So what that means is, if you have a credit card that says you can spend $1,000 on this credit card, your line amount is 1,000. You need to make sure that you do not charge more than 30% of that credit card every month, which means you can't charge more than $300. And it does still affect your credit score if you even pay it off at the end of the month. Because what happens is the credit bureaus, the 3 bureaus, depending on when your credit card pings your credit bureau when their bill was due, it might not be in time when you've paid the bill. So your credit score could go down if you charged more than 30% on your credit card. So try to keep your credit card balances at 30% of the limit. Try to keep your payments on time, and not close any credit cards. Student loans actually do help your credit score go up quite a bit. So those are good things, but if you do not want to be late, because if you're late, that really drops your score a lot. So right now you want to try to keep your credit score as best as possible to help you get you into the best loan program that's available for you. Next. All right, so I'm going to pass the buck now to our friend Todd Santora, which is an appraiser extraordinaire. The appraisal process is part of the loan process as well. The bank is going to hire an independent appraiser to make sure the house price that you're purchasing is what the value of the property is. And so it's important for the bank because we can't give you a loan unless the appraised value is what the purchase price is, or else we have to renegotiate the loan. So I'm going to have Todd talk about the appraisal and why the appraisal part is so important in this process.
Okay, thank you very much, Sophia and Jackie. My name is Todd Santora. I am a state certified residential appraiser. And basically what that means is I'm allowed to appraise any residential property in the state of Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine, regardless of value or complexity. So I've been in appraisal, in the real estate industry for 22 years, 19 as an appraiser. My company name is Value Centric, and we're based out of Chicago, and I am the regional manager for them in New England. So both Jackie and Sophia mentioned that the appraisal is a very integral part of the buying process. The biggest difference with me than other professionals on this panel is you'll probably never meet me. I am hired as an independent contractor by the bank or the lender. So a company like Mortgage Network would hire me directly. So Mortgage Network or the bank would be my client. Even though it's probably part of your closing cost and you'll eventually be paying for it, I am contracted by the bank or the lender, and I'm hired to protect their interest and provide an unbiased opinion of value. The key there being unbiased. So typically when I'm on an appraisal appointment, I'm meeting with the listing realtor, so somebody like Jackie, and you as the buyer typically aren't there, and neither is somebody like Sophia. But in the process of protecting the bank's interest, I'm also protecting your interest as a buyer, directly in that process. One of the things that's important is not only working with your realtor, but also your mortgage professional, and understanding how the appraisal can potentially affect the buying process. So just to use simple numbers, if let's say you're going to Northeastern and you're interested in post-grad to buying a condo on Gainsborough Street for $100,000. Now we all know you're not buying anything for $100,000 on Gainsborough Street, but just to keep the numbers easy, actually you could buy a parking spot maybe. So if you're putting 20% down, that would mean that you're putting down $20,000, and then the bank's giving you, or Mortgage Network is giving you a loan for $80,000. So that $80,000, that 80% is the bank or the mortgage company's interest. And that 20% that you put down is your interest. So if I appraise your condo that you're interested in purchasing for 100 or 110, everything is fine. If I appraise it for 95,000, which is 5,000 less than your purchase price, then that has implications on your loan that you need to work with your mortgage professional to understand, as well as your realtor, because the bank no longer has an 80% interest. They now have an 85% interest. The reason why I mention that is, and Sophia mentioned this as well, is one of the important things is always try to stay local in the lending process. Because a company like Mortgage Network is based out of Danvers, and they also have an appraisal operations desk in Portland, Maine. And their job up at that appraisal desk is to manage independent contractors like myself for the appraisal for every loan, whether it be a refinance or a purchase. So they know when they have that condo on Gainsborough Street that my specialty as an appraiser is Suffolk County. So that appraisal order is going to go to me or another appraiser that has specialty in Suffolk County. Same thing if there's a purchase in Danvers, there's going to be a list of 2 or 3 appraisers that appraisal desk for Mortgage Network know the Danvers market very, very well. If you go to a Bank of America or a Quicken Loans, they don't have an appraisal department. They outsource it. And when you outsource that to an appraisal management company, they have a profit interest. So they have an interest to turn that appraisal around as quickly as possible and as cheap as possible. And they don't necessarily pay attention to geographical competency. So, and Jackie can probably attest to this, she's selling a home in Needham or Newton, and there's an appraiser coming up from Rhode Island or down from New Hampshire that doesn't necessarily know the market. And they're coming from a large lender that's trying to get it done as quick as possible. So it's very, very important to know your lender and make sure that they're local, and make sure that the appraiser that goes out there knows the market. And your loan originator or your mortgage professional like Sophia can manage that. And Jackie, being the front person on the line as the realtor, can manage that process as well to make sure that the appraiser that's coming out is competent on the market. The last thing I'll end with is, prior to being an appraiser, and still to this day, I'm also an investor, and I would never, even to this day, purchase a property without professional representation of a realtor, and without knowing my loan originator very well, and having that person, somebody like Sophia, understand the product that I'm buying, understand my current financial situation, and recommend the best product for me. That trust between those 2 people is unbreakable. And the buying process can be very daunting. So those 2 professionals can help you through it. And that's it for me. Thank you very much, and more than happy to answer any questions that you have.
Awesome, Todd. Thanks. I'm going to turn it over to Rob, and he's going to talk about the inspection process.
All right. My name is Robert Andrade. I'm with Philadelphia Post Home Inspectors. I'm a licensed home inspector in the state of Connecticut and Massachusetts. So basically, the home inspection process, our job, we come after the offer has been placed on the house. And like Jackie had said, you usually have about 10 days from the accepted offer to conduct an inspection. In the most simplest terms, my job is to go in there and find any major defects with that home that you are potentially buying. So unfortunately, we're usually going there, picking it apart, telling you everything that's wrong with the house. So sometimes we're the bad news people that come in there. So the thing that I tell everybody before the home inspection, you have to go in there with an open mind, because no house is perfect. Every house is going to need some work. Something Jackie can attest to is even new construction homes do need work. There are things when we go into new construction homes and do a home inspection on them that need to be done. So when we go through, we're looking at siding, roofing, windows, structure of the house, how the topography around the house is affecting the house, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, and everything between that. Basically everything within those 4 walls. So the most important thing is that you are present for the home inspection. Some people and some inspectors will tell you not to be there for the home inspection. Make sure you are there for it. Because like Jackie was saying, not only are we going to go over all those broken items, end of service life, but we are also going to be educating you on how your home operates and what you need to do to properly maintain that house. A typical home inspection will usually last 2 to 4 hours. It really depended on the size of the home. Obviously, a 500 square foot condo is going to be much quicker and shorter than a 5,000 square foot Colonial. Have half a day set aside for that there. There are also additional items that we can test for in the houses. So if you're buying a home on a well, we always recommend a water quality testing. There's radon testing, mold testing, and other items that you can also check for. And that's about all I had.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Rob. And let's go over to Krista to talk about all things legal.
All right, thank you. I'm just watching here, a lot of really good questions coming in. So I want to keep this quick because we want to get to your questions. So just a little intro, I work at Killeen Law Office. We're out of Wellesley. I work in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And I was a 2008 Northeastern graduate. So I am a Husky. So you can see my diploma in the back there. I'm pretty proud of it. So, all right. So I have been practicing as a real estate attorney for now about 10 years. In this home buying process, there's generally 3 attorneys. There's the seller's attorney, which, a buyer has nothing to do with. And then there's 2 roles for an attorney that a buyer would be involved with. There's a buyer attorney who serves as your advocate in the buying process. So the buyer's attorney would review offers. They would work with your agent to make sure that any negotiation terms are incorporated into the purchase and sale agreement. We would draft that. We would negotiate that. If you're buying a condominium, there's condominium documents that you should have. You should be reading as a buyer, but the attorney will also advise on things because they've been reading condominium documents. They read hundreds of them a year, so they're much more familiar with the ins and outs of small condos versus large condos. Part of your buyer advocate attorney will also learn what happens at the inspection, and if there's issues that need to be addressed, we make sure that those are addressed prior to the closing. And as Rob said, you want to be at the home inspection because if you know what it looks like when you're at the time that we're negotiating the purchase and sale agreement, when you go to close, you'll know what it looks like then, and you can compare and contrast. And if things are not in the condition you expect, then your attorney will help right those wrongs, whether it be getting something fixed or asking for a credit, that kind of stuff. So the buyer attorney really is there just to assist you with buyer type things. The lender's attorney, and lender, I mean bank, mortgage, broker, anyone lending you money essentially. And I see that some people are asking what's the difference between a bank and a broker, which we can go over later. But the lender attorney does due diligence for the lender, which means we research the title of the property. So that's the history, that's tax liens, property lines, and the lender attorney is the one who will actually conduct the closing. So these 2 roles can work together because they have both roles have a similar interest. So the buyer attorney wants to protect the buyer, the lender attorney wants to protect the lender's interest in the property. And pretty much if the lender is happy, the buyer's happy. If the buyer's happy, the lender's happy. So it's generally, I'd say maybe 85% of transactions, the attorney who represents the buyer also represents the lender. There's, some smaller banks have just attorneys that they work with, and they won't let you use your personal family attorney because the lender has a history with that attorney, and they want to keep, they want the work that the attorney produces to be consistent, and they want to trust that attorney. So the attorney roles can work together, or in some transactions, there will be a buyer attorney and a lender attorney, in which case there's 3 attorneys involved, but it's always cheaper to keep it at the seller's attorney and a lender/buyer attorney if you can. But there are instances where the lender's attorney, you might not necessarily want to use them as your buyer attorney, but those are specific cases. So just again, briefly, the lender attorney is really looking to make sure that you have a clear record, a marketable title, which means you're able to sell the property back when you are ready to sell. If the lender's attorney is not your buyer attorney, then you need to remember that they don't represent you as a buyer. They represent the lender. So things like walkthrough issues, or you know, a light switch isn't working at your closing, the lender's attorney doesn't necessarily get involved in that, in which case you have no one in your corner if you don't have a buyer's attorney to help you, except for your agent, which they can help, but sometimes attorneys like to get involved in things like that. Maybe we stick our head in a little bit too much, but sometimes it's better to have an attorney fighting those issues, because I've never been to the property, whereas the agent has, but I can argue what I think is right in most situations if, you know, a light switch doesn't work. And the lender attorney is who you're going to sit down with at the closing. If you have a buyer attorney, that attorney can also attend the closing. And all money will pass through the lender attorney. So you're not ever cutting a check to the seller and wondering how things like, you know, making sure that it goes to the right bank account. All money comes in through us. The lender sends us money, the buyer sends us money, and we distribute it out to whoever needs to be paid. So as you know, as Jackie kind of mentioned in the process, you have the offer to purchase, which is binding. So having a lawyer look at it isn't a bad idea. And then in Massachusetts, we moved to purchase and sale agreement. Rhode Island's a little bit different. We kind of do the purchase and sale at the same time as the offer. And part of what a buyer attorney will do is protect your deposit. So we'll work with Sophia and her team, or the lender's team, to make sure that you're hitting your deadlines when it comes to getting your mortgage commitment. So when the lender says, yes, your credit looks good, you have enough money, we're definitely going to lend to you, we will, I make sure to follow up and make sure that your deadline is met and that you don't lose your deposit. And just some quick things that have been going on lately. A lot of people have been waiving inspections because the market's really competitive, and something that I would, you know, when working with buyers, I can advise them, you know, if you're a contractor, maybe waiving an inspection isn't a big deal if you can fix things up. If you are a first-time home buyer who's never held a hammer, I would say probably don't waive an inspection, because you might not know what you're getting into. And right now, foreclosures and short sales, I really won't get into, but foreclosures are very complicated. And if you're looking to buy from a foreclosure, right now is very tricky. COVID has changed a lot of foreclosure rules. So I would say you definitely need to make sure that you have a competent attorney, and make sure that the listing agent has made sure that they've gone through all the steps of foreclosure, and that you're not going to have a surprise if you think that you're buying a house that's been foreclosed on, and you try to get to the closing and it's not ready to close because the paperwork's not in place. New construction also, a lot of building out there right now, a lot of delays, some COVID related, some just related to new construction takes a long time. Building a house takes a long time. If you need to get into a house, on September 15th and you're buying a new construction, I'd say don't plan on getting on into that house September 15th, especially in COVID days, because we are looking at supply delays for contractors. We're looking at the towns, when they issue building permits, are not able to get out there. National Grid isn't able to get out there to put in, gas lines. All of these delays that are difficult in new construction are even more difficult right now during COVID times. We're also in 2021 and there's scams all over the place. I'm sure you'll see fake real estate listings where it seems like a house is for sale, but something's kind of off about it. I don't know what benefit it is to have those type of scams, but people do that. There's a lot of wire fraud. So part of the role, both a lender attorney and a buyer attorney, is to make sure that you are fully prepared if you're sending a wire for any of your deposits or anything, is making sure that you have the correct instructions and that we're confirming that wires are going to the right places. I've personally had to do FBI cases where wires have gone to the wrong places, and that's not good if you're a buyer and you're trying to buy a house and your wire disappears. So it's unfortunate, but it has hit our industry very hard, and there's a lot of scammers out there. That's pretty much, I think, all I'll have to say, because I think a lot of these questions might get on some of these things. But right now, I saw someone asked, who do you bring to the closing and why? The closing table used to be a fun, happy, friendly place. All the agents would gather. The loan officer might even come. The closing attorney or the lender attorney is there. And now, unfortunately, we are pretty much every single attorney has said only the people buying the property can come to closing. Mom and dad can't come, even though it's super exciting. We're trying to keep things to the least amount of people, the safest way possible. Real estate is an essential business and it needs to keep moving, but we're trying to be safe, keep everyone safe. So the less number of people at the closing table, at least right now, is unfortunately how we have to do things. So it's a little less fanfare than it used to be, but you just sit down with me and we sign some documents, and that's how it is. And hopefully in the next few months, things can get a little bit better and closings can go back to being exciting. It should be the most exciting, time or most exciting purchase that you ever make. And I'm hoping that we can get there soon. And yeah, that's it. I think I'll turn it over to Jackie to maybe field some questions here.
Yes, I am so afraid to exit out of my screen. I'm trying to pull up the chat feature, but I'm afraid to touch anything. So I think that there might be some questions. If someone wants.
Can I answer the question about the appraisal? A lot of people are asking about the question about the lower appraisals.
Todd, do you want to take that one?
No, I can answer. So we talked about the appraisal and why it's important. And a lot of people are asking if the appraisal does come in low, how does that affect your loan? And because this market has been crazy, a lot of people are going above asking. Okay. And this is where we're just reiterating again why it's important to have a good real estate agent in advance and a good lender in advance. So a good agent like Jackie would do what's called a CMA, or comparative market analysis, and see what houses are selling for in the area. And if you're going above asking, we really would know that if it was close. If she's like, Jackie would call me and say, Sophia, I think this is really close. They want to go, let's say 20,000 above asking, but the market's increasing. I will talk to the buyer about plan A, plan B, plan C, so that they're not shocked in advance if for some reason there's not a lot of comps in that area. If Todd, has done, looked at all the comparables, and the comparable means stuff that has sold recently within the last 3 to 6 months in the area. What has been selling. We can go back as far as a year, but if there's just nothing like that and the value comes in low, we can either restructure the loan. We can see if the seller will reduce the price at that point, but in this market, probably not. So we need to have a plan A and B, and language built into, let's say, your offer. This is where a good attorney comes in, like a Krista, that says, you know what, we had in your contract written in that if the appraisal comes in less than $20,000 above your asking, then you're willing to renegotiate that house. So there's so many ways. I mean, we could probably spend a whole class talking about this between the four of us, between Todd, Jackie, and Krista and I. So just again, try to talk to your agent about it. If you're going above asking, or you think there's going to be issue on the appraisal of the property, and we will see more of this in this market that's coming, because what's going to happen is as rates start to increase, which we do think they will this year, house prices are going to start doing this. So rates will increase and house prices are going to start coming down to overcompensate. So more than likely, if you're going to buy within the next year to 2 years, you could have an appraisal issue. So make sure you understand it, and you're talking to professionals that can help you, guide you through the steps.
Thank you, Sophia. I'm going to hop on here and help because Jackie wants to make sure she's watching over that very important PowerPoint. Another question: does someone offering all cash for a property dramatically increase the value of the house?
I'll take that one, guys. Or Todd, do you want to take that one?
Sure. I mean, I had a little bit piece in that for the appraisal process. If you are offering cash, it still is smart to hire an appraiser to make sure you're not drastically overpaying. But as far as does it affect the value? No, from my perspective, it does not, because I'm looking at comparable sales in the neighborhood, as Sophia said, within the past 3 to 6 months. Jackie can probably talk to the power it has of offering cash. It's much more attractive to a seller. So I'll hand it over to Jackie and she can handle that.
Yeah. So great question. So if you have the opportunity to buy a property cash, it does not affect the value, because at the end of the day, the seller and what's going on public record is that it was paid for in some way, shape, or form, whether it comes from your cash or whether it comes from the bank or comes from mom and dad. At the end of the day, cash versus financing doesn't affect the value. It's all the same. But cash is king. Cash is king. Usually if I'm representing the seller and we have multiple offers, if someone has all cash, most of the time that will be the offer that's accepted, because there's usually not as many contingencies with that. I haven't seen all cash in quite a while. Many people need a mortgage. So don't feel like if I'm saying this, don't be discouraged that you don't have $1 million cash. Most people don't. Absolutely. Like if there is an all cash offer, that will be typically weighed more than someone with financing, but please rest assured that most people have a loan.
Can I
Okay.
answer? There's a few questions here that are similar.
Please do.
Okay. Talking about waiving inspection contingencies and trying to renegotiate after either waiving an inspection or after an inspection. Jackie can speak to this as well, but I'm seeing a lot of people waiving the inspection and trying to renegotiate terms after. The point of the inspection is to know what the property looks like, and it gives you the ability to negotiate. If you choose to not have an inspection, which is, you're right. Negotiating after the fact is very difficult, and often a seller is not going to entertain negotiating any sort of issues that you have, because they accepted your offer based on the fact that you weren't going to negotiate inspection issues. And it's certainly risky, as someone asked here, to waive an inspection and hope that the seller will renegotiate the terms of the offer, because the offer, again, is a binding contract. And if you're saying, I don't care about the inspection, it's hard to go back and then say, well, this isn't great, I'd like a price reduction. So pros and cons, you might get your offer accepted, but you might be stuck with that offer.
Thank you, Krista. Let's go for, I think we only have a couple more minutes as well as a couple more questions. What do you recommend as a percentage for a down payment for a home? How do varying percentages change your likelihood of getting an offer accepted?
Sophia, do you want to take this one or do you want me to take it?
I just want you to answer about the down payment, getting your offer accepted, and then I'll do the rest.
Yes. So great question. It is going to depend on what state you're in and also what market you're in. But percentage of down payment, most of the time, it is anywhere between 5% and 20%. That's where most sellers want to see your down payment, because that typically means you have more reserves should anything happen. So most sellers want to see 5% to 10% to 20%. Of course, if you have more cash that you want to put down, that always looks fabulous to the seller. But most of the time, 5% to 20% is what is going to be a winning offer. But Sophia, I'll let you speak to that as well.
Yeah, and the down payment, that you definitely want to talk to your loan officer about down payment options and how that affects the type of loan you're doing. If you're familiar with PMI or mortgage insurance, the more you put down, the lower your PMI will be. So you definitely want to explore different options. And I've had many people tell me, well, what if I say on the offer that I'm doing 20%, but then I actually only do 5% down or 10% down? That could be an issue, because if you get denied for the loan, there is a part in the contract that says how much you're putting as a down payment. And Krista will tell you. So you want to make sure that you are applying for what's in that contract. You don't want to say something different. That's it.
I'm going to hop to the next one. If people don't, if other panelists want to contribute, feel free to cut me off. This person apologizes for maybe not wording this clearly, but I'm going to try to read it as clearly as I can. I've heard rumors that the housing market is extremely competitive and properties are being overbid upwards of $100,000 over ask. How long do you see this continuing, and should I defer contacting a realtor until I've budgeted a down payment / closing costs / taxes that anticipate needing to overbid an asking price?
Yeah. Great question. I'm happy to answer this one. So absolutely, depending on the market that you're in, and especially in the Massachusetts market, it has been common for many, if not most, properties to go over list price. And the reason being for that is there's not a lot of inventory. And what we mean by inventory is there's not a lot of homes on the market, but interest rates are amazing. So there's a lot of buyers who want to buy right now. So we have a supply and demand issue. So not a lot of supply, but there's high demand. So sometimes it's like the Hunger Games out there. It is common for properties to go over that. We are hoping that as COVID lightens up a little bit, that more people feel comfortable, that more homes will be listed, which will help that supply and demand. Once more supply goes up, more buyers will just have more to choose from. I don't think that this is completely going away. for the next 6 months. So that is why I think it is a good idea to have a conversation with a realtor and a lender now, so that you can best prepare of what do my finances need to look like? What areas should or do I need to look in? Also, I think it's important to have this conversation now, because they might be able to open your eyes to other opportunities. You know, maybe you were thinking of just staying in Massachusetts, but do you need to be in downtown Boston anymore? Maybe not. Maybe you can go to Western Mass. Maybe it's a little bit less competitive. So I think it's always a good idea to just have a conversation. It doesn't mean you need to take action now, but being knowledgeable on what the market is like and what you may need to do in terms of finances and preparing the best offer, I think is really smart.
Tyler, or sorry, I see a question on here about a home warranty to cover things after you move in. It's a good question because, and it's one that not many people ask. There are companies that cover your appliances and things that for relatively cheap, and I say cheap as $500, you can get a warranty. And the company doesn't necessarily even have to know the condition, the full condition of your appliances and things. Sometimes a seller or a listing agent will offer a home appliance warranty to buyers. If things are, 1 or 2 years old and they're trying, if, the deal is going really well, you might find that the seller is offering a warranty for from one of these services that's out there. If not, it's not a bad idea for you to look into getting one of these warranties, but it also depends how, risk averse you are. And it depends on how old the appliances are. If it's a, 20-year-old refrigerator, and that you're going to need to get a new refrigerator soon, you might just be wasting money on that warranty. If the cost of the fridge is less than the warranty, you know how it works. But a lot of people don't buy those warranties, and they're not an awful idea. I recommend them. And if you're buying a new construction, the appliances come with warranties as well.
I think we're down to our last two. Krista, I think you were reading one. Do you want to take it, or are you?
Well, I like are people giving up and moving away question. Jackie can probably answer this, but
Yeah.
I think it's tough right now. As Jackie said, the supply is not what buyers want. And honestly, if you're looking to buy a house in downtown Boston, right now is not a bad time to buy, because some people are leaving the city, and property values are a little bit unusual right now in downtown Boston. But Jackie can speak to if people are giving up. Some people have been looking for years, right? That's the way it is right now.
Yeah, I can speak more to this too, Krista. So this will, maybe this attendee is in the Massachusetts market, and it is pretty competitive if you're in the suburbs. So I have had some buyers who are just taking a back seat for a little bit because it was getting too emotional for them, which is totally understandable. However, I do think it's still a good time to look because interest rates are so good, so good. Sophia, I don't know how banks are making money right now because interest rates are so good, but it's personal preference, up to you whether you want to keep going, knowing that there might be a few properties that you just don't get. And to Krista's point too, where I think real opportunity is right now is in Boston, like downtown Boston, South Boston, surrounding areas. And the reason being, it's kind of like Boston's on sale right now. Like Boston is the TJ Maxx and Marshalls of the real estate world, which I've never said before. I've been in real estate my whole entire life. And Boston was never that way. I think many cities, you can also say the same thing. LA, New York, Miami. It's almost like city urban living, you know, people have started to migrate out of. But so I think there's a real opportunity to buy. It's usually less competitive. You might be able to get a deal. I mean, I don't know. We'll see what we can do. But I find Boston to be refreshing right now. So hopefully that answered that question.
The question about
Go
off-market
ahead.
sales, if the biggest things to consider for potential off-market sales, first is, are there agents involved, or if it's a private sale completely with no agents involved, you need to be careful about what you're paying, because if you're getting a loan and you're not appraising for what you're paying, because they haven't properly priced it, you could run into trouble there. Also, estate sales, there's some issues if you don't have good representation in terms of what type of, how they're delivering the property, because no one's been living there. It might not be insured, and there might be some things that you need to consider in terms of title delays and that kind of stuff. And if there's no, agent involved, you don't really have an advocate for you there. But it's not a horrible idea if you're buying a house from a family friend, but there's considerations. And sold as is, I saw a question come up, which Jackie can also talk about, but that means it's sold the way it looks. They're unwilling to negotiate. This is my house, take it or leave it. We're not going to be fixing things at your inspection. They might let you have an inspection, but just for informational purposes. But otherwise, as is really means don't ask me for anything. If your offer is accepted, that's what we're going with. And there's usually not a lot of leeway there. And so you do have to be careful that you know what your appraisal will come in at, or approximately, and that you're not overpaying, and that you're prepared to take a house as is.
Do I see an empty Q&A box? I think I do. So I will jump in. We're a little past the hour, so thank you, everyone. I've been a homeowner for a while now, but there is always something to learn in this process. So really, thank you, Sophia and Todd and Rob and Krista and Jackie, for all of your time tonight. For those that are still on with us, you'll be getting a post-event survey, if not later tonight, early tomorrow. The PDF of the slides will be provided, as well as the email addresses for our panelists. So if you had a burning question you didn't get to type in tonight, I'm sure you can reach out to our panelists and seek some advice. But really, you're getting some love in the Q&A. Everyone's appreciating it and thinks this was informative. And remember too, this was recorded. So if you need to rewatch it, we will include the link to that virtual archive events page on our website, so that you, in a couple of days, it takes a little bit to download this from the massive Zoom cloud in the sky. But thank you all so much. And we look forward to seeing you virtually and down the road, hopefully in person at some point. So everyone, I hope you all take care and see you soon.